Good morning. Welcome to summer online worship with the First Unitarian Church of Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm Sten Gustafson, a member of the church. Our service leaders this morning are Vivian Shortreed and Liz Gustafson. Our musician is Carrick McCullough, and Connor West is our technical director. It is wonderful to have all of you who are watching with us this morning. Here at First Unitarian Church, we strive in loving fellowship to honor the sacred, connect with each other, and serve justice. We are a welcoming congregation. Whatever your age, race, class, nationality, sexual orientation, or gender identity, we are delighted to have you with us this morning. We are thinking of all of you with love and affection during this difficult time when we cannot be together in person. You can stay connected to the church through our website, firstunitarian.com, our Facebook page, and our newsletter. If you would like to receive our e-newsletter, please go to firstunitarian.com and click subscribe to our newsletter at the bottom of any page.
In the spirit of love, we light this chalice. Together we join in renewing the covenant of our church. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all.
The common prayer this morning is adapted from the Celtic Benediction by J. Philip Newell. In the busyness of this day, Holy One, grant us a stillness of seeing. In the conflicting voices of our hearts, grant us a calmness of hearing. Let our seeing and our hearing, our words and our actions be rooted in a silent certainty of your presence. Let our passions for life and the longings for justice that stir within us be grounded in the experience of your stillness. May our lives be rooted in the ground of your peace, Holy One. May we be rooted in the depths of your peace. In our sacred time together, we share the joys and sorrows of our church with one another. For people with physical and emotional illness, and for those who love them, we hold them in our thoughts. For people who strive to overcome injustices in our world, we hold them in our thoughts and prayers. For the homeless in our community, and for the people who endeavor to help them, we hold them in our thoughts and prayers. Please join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This service was prepared with the help of a number of people. Linda Cavallero, Jeff Conlon, Terry Field, Lee Bona, and Liz Gustafson, who's leading the service with me this morning. You will also hear during this the voice of Dave Blodgett. Our reading is from the Boundless Way Zen, Guiding Teachers' Response to Institutional Racism. This teaching, which appeared in their blog on June 20th, was written by Melissa Blacker, David Reinick, Bob Waldinger, and Michael Fielicki. We, the guiding teachers of Boundless Way Zen, grieve the recent murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Rayshard Brooks. We also grieve the disproportionate suffering and death of people of color due to the coronavirus, which has exposed underlying inequities in our society. We recognize the deeply embedded and often violent ways that systemic racism and white privilege deprive everyone of the justice, respect, and equal rights we have vowed to co-create with all beings. We vow to practice the humility that is essential to listening deeply, and that is the beginning of real and lasting change. We vow to investigate and transform our deluded views and blindnesses that maintain overt and systemic racism. We commit to continually awaken and grow on this journey toward liberation for all.
The First Unitarian Church relies on your financial support to maintain our diverse ministries and programs. If you would like to support all we do as a church, text 844-906-2338, followed by the amount you wish to donate. You can also go to firstunitarian.com and click Give Online at the top of any page. I invite your generous contributions to the good work of First Unitarian Church.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That statement contains within it a set of promises. Promises broken at the time of its signing in 1776, and that remain broken today. What follows are the voices of people you know. Their stories will share moments of insight into the meaning and the cost of these broken promises. This is Linda Cavallero's story. A friend told me this story. In the 1980s, she was driving long distance home from college in North Carolina to home in Georgia. On the way, she stopped for gas and snacks in a rural area. She entered a convenience store and picked up chips or whatever, and stood at the end of a long line of customers. She let her mind wander while waiting until she heard an insistent voice saying, "Miss, miss." Looking up, she saw the store clerk beckoning to her. It became clear that the other customers, all black, had stood aside and that all expected that the clerk should wait on her ahead of them. She froze and took in the scene. She felt she could not address the contradictions in what she was doing or oppose the status quo. She paid for her things and quickly left the store and the area, feeling queasy and uncertain.
This is Linda Carney's story. She wrote, "I grew up in a small town, so had no racial diversity in my experience until I went to Purdue University. In that environment in the early 1960s, having friends or conversations with people of another color was not unusual nor particularly noticed. The first time I was startled enough to examine my own feelings was in a graduate level class where we were talking about diversity in systems or in classrooms. The professor asked, 'How many of you have a friend who's black?' That wasn't hard. Then the question, 'How many of you would invite a black friend into your family's home for dinner?' That was a wake-up call for me, as the answer might very well depend on where you live. The professor went on to say, 'Here you are, young adults in a privileged environment. How open-minded are you to accept diversity and all those slogans if you don't live it?' I'll never forget that moment. Not so long after, my new husband and I were gifted with an invitation that was the reverse of that question. How would we receive an invitation to the home of a black family? Shortly after we were married in the late summer of 1963, my husband was called to active duty in Germany. We boarded a freighter on November 25th. After a turbulent and foggy ocean trip of about 10 days, we arrived at his post where we were housed in austere barracks-style quarters for 8 weeks. We were looking at Christmas, our first away from home. Early in our time there, my husband met a black officer, the same rank as his, whose name was Chuck. They hit it off immediately. I was actively working to adjust to my situation, starting to learn German and to navigate the city bus lines. I knew no one. Then Roger came home one day and said that Chuck and his wife, Annette, had invited us for dinner on Christmas Eve. This gracious invitation made all the difference in our lives at that time. It was the beginning of a friendship that lasted 30 years. I have never stopped being grateful for having that friendship. Their invitation to us was a gift of kindness and graciousness, and our years of friendship afterwards were rich and full. Would that have happened if we'd been stationed in the United States?
This is my story. In 1967-68, my husband was an administrator for the agency that ran the anti-poverty program in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It afforded me a special opportunity to get to know leaders in the Black community there. I became friends with a lovely woman named Glendora. Glendora had a beautiful voice and sang at our anti-poverty rallies. She invited me to go to church with her one Sunday. I went out of curiosity and because I was her friend and I knew it was important to her. I don't remember the first part of the service, but I do remember that shortly into the service, the musical director stood up from his keyboard and began to sing.
You don't have to ride if you don't want to ride. You don't have to ride if you don't want to ride. You don't have to ride if you don't want to ride. Brother, you don't have to ride on that train.
After the first line, the congregation joined in, and the song went on. If you don't want to sing, if you don't want to shout, if you don't want to pray, and so forth. The singing of that song in that church was so powerful that it took my breath away, and I never forgot. I sang it afterwards, often. But I was puzzled by it. I knew that singing and shouting and praying were to be expected there, and I wasn't sure why they were singing about not having to do it. Glendora's partner, Leonard, made a family with her and her 2 daughters. Milwaukee had quite recently become an international port due to the opening up of the St. Lawrence Seaway. Leonard signed on to apprenticeship for the Longshoremen's Union. Leonard did very well. He showed up when and where he was supposed to and passed all his tests. He was within just a couple of days of being brought into union membership when he was intercepted on his way to work and beaten severely. His assailants made certain that he would not go to work for a long time. Leonard decided it was best to leave town, so he went back to Baltimore where he had family and friends. Glendora and her daughters could not afford to go with him. Sometime later, I put it all together. I realized what the song was about. It was a song of freedom. Freedom in their own church with the people in that place. They were not free at work. They were not free in school. They were not free on the streets. But it was the gift of their church that they were free inside, worshiping with each other. They were not safe, but free.
You don't have to sing if you don't want to sing. You don't have to sing if you don't want to sing. You don't have to sing if you don't want to sing. You don't have to ride that train.
This is Carol Gregory's story. Carol wrote, "It was in the early 2000s. I was principal at a middle school in Northampton. It was spring, and the 8th grade class was rewarded by an excursion to a local park. On the return walk, in the presence of 10 other students, some of them his friends, a white 8th grader named Max called a black 8th grader, John, the N-word. John struck him with a closed fist and knocked him to the ground. The one-punch event ended when teachers intervened. Both students were sent to the school office upon their return to school about 5 minutes later. When I interviewed him, John said that Max had called him the N-word. It wasn't the first time it had happened, and he punched him. Max denied saying the N-word. However, 10 other students who had witnessed the incident were interviewed and confirmed what John had said. Some of the 10 were Max's friends, and some were not. I spoke with each student separately to hear their stories, to confirm for them that their actions would have consequences, and to inform them that I would contact their parents. I expected John's dad to be extremely upset about the use of the N-word towards his son. After he had greeted me, John's dad sat down facing his son. He said, "John, we've talked about this. You can't do this. When you get older, if you do this, they will shoot you." John's father talked to his son as if I were not in the room. What he was basically saying to his son was, "I am trying to save your life." For her part, Max's mom said that her son would never have said such a thing. Therefore, he should not be punished. I told her that 10 other students were witnesses and confirmed that he had said it. She continued to deny it. I said to her, "I hear you, but we have to hear those students who were there, some of whom are friends of your son. Max will not be able to attend the moving on ceremony tomorrow." The contrast in how these parents handled the actions of their sons was dramatic. The great learning for me was what this man had said to his son. I expected justifiable outrage from the black father, but outrage was secondary for him. The most important thing for him was taking care of his son. This was a transformative moment for me. I was grounded in my reality of life at school. John's dad was grounded in his reality of life and death. My change was not visible to the outsider, but I was changed. This experience changed the way I hear other people, the way I talk to other people. I began to say, "Can you help me to understand?" much more often. I know I may not be able to fully understand. Therefore, on behalf of John and his father, I commit to listen and to try.
We close with these words from the last essay of John Lewis, which was published at his request on the day of his funeral, July 17, 2020. You must study and learn the lessons of history, because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle to lay down the burdens of division for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe, because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence, is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide.